The wormhole network had changed everything. Commander Elena Vasquez stood before the massive observation deck of Gateway Station, watching as another merchant vessel disappeared into the shimmering portal that led to Kepler 442b. The sight never got old, space folding in on itself, reality bending like heated glass, creating a tunnel through the cosmos that made the impossible mundane. What had once taken generations to reach now lay mere hours away. Another shipment of rare Earth elements coming back from the Centauri colonies, reported Lieutenant Chen, consulting his tablet. And the Andromedans are requesting more of our classical music recordings. Apparently, Bach is causing quite a sensation in the Spiral Arm Confederacy. Elena nodded, still mesmerized by the portal's hypnotic dance of light and shadow. 18 months since first contact through the network, and humanity had established trade relationships with 47 different species across 32 star systems. It was the golden age that science fiction writers had dreamed of: peaceful commerce, cultural exchange, and technological advancement at a pace that left historians scrambling to document it all. "Any word from the mapping division?" Elena asked. "Actually, yes." Chen's voice carried a note of excitement. "They've detected a new hub, massive one, possibly supporting dozens of connected systems. The signal's coming from approximately 12,000 light-years spinward. They're calling it the Veridan Nexus." Elena turned from the viewport. The mapping division had been working around the clock to chart the network, following quantum entanglement signatures that led to new nodes. Each discovery opened doors to new civilizations, new opportunities, new wonders. The network itself remained a mystery, ancient beyond measure, built by some long-vanished race that had seeded the galaxy with these permanent tiers in spacetime. "Preliminary readings?" she asked. "Energy signatures unlike anything we've cataloged. The quantum resonance patterns suggest technology that makes even the Andromedans look primitive." Chen paused, checking his data again. "Director Morrison wants to mount an expedition. First contact protocol, full diplomatic suite." Elena felt the familiar thrill of discovery. Each new world brought revelations that reshaped humanity's understanding of the universe. The crystalline entities of Tau Ceti had taught them to grow circuits from living minerals. The storm riders of Proxima had shared weather control technologies that were already terraforming Mars. What wonders awaited in the Veridan Nexus? "When do we leave?" she asked. 48 hours. The UES horizon is being prepped as we speak." Elena gazed once more at the swirling portal, then headed for the exit. She had preparations to make. The translation through the Veridan Nexus wormhole felt different. Captain Sarah Novick had made over 200 jumps through the network, but this one seemed to stretch on forever. The usual brief moment of disorientation became a prolonged journey through what felt like liquid starlight. When the horizon finally emerged, her sensor officer immediately began scanning the local space. "Captain," Lieutenant Martinez called out, voice tight with awe, "you need to see this." The main screen flickered to life, revealing a sight that defied comprehension. They had emerged in a system with 7 stars, not orbiting each other in the typical binary or trinary fashion, but arranged in a perfect heptagon around a central point. Each star pulsed with a different color, their light seeming to flow between them in visible streams of plasma and energy. "That's not possible," Dr. Yuki Tanaka, the expedition's chief scientist, whispered from her station. "Stars don't arrange themselves geometrically. The gravitational forces alone should have torn this system apart eons ago." "And yet here it is," Elena said, studying the display. As mission commander, she had final authority over first contact procedures, but the sight before them challenged every assumption about stellar mechanics. "Captain," Martinez continued, "I'm reading massive structures in orbit around each star. They're enormous. Some of them are larger than Earth's moon." The tactical display zoomed in on the nearest star, revealing what appeared to be a vast latticework of crystalline structures surrounding it completely. The constructions weren't orbiting the star. They were stationary relative to its surface, somehow maintaining position despite the immense gravitational and magnetic forces at play. How are they not being vaporized? Dr. Tanaka asked, her scientific mind reeling. The radiation levels alone should have reduced any known material to plasma. Unknown material composition, Martinez reported. The structures are reflecting our scans. I can't get any clear readings on what they're made of. Alina moved to the navigation station. Distance to the nearest inhabited world. There, Martinez highlighted a world orbiting the orange star in the formation's lower right. Preliminary scans suggest an oxygen-nitrogen atmosphere, extensive urban development, and, he paused, running the scan again. Population readings in the hundreds of billions. Hundreds of billions. Alina's mind raced. Earth's population had just passed 9 billion. A civilization that could support that many people possessed technology far beyond anything they'd encountered. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. Multiple frequencies, standard galactic protocol headers. On screen, the display shimmered, then resolved into the image of a being that was unmistakably alive, yet seemed to be composed of living light. Its form was vaguely humanoid, but its skin appeared to be made of the same plasma that flowed between the stars. When it spoke, its voice came through the universal translators as a melodious harmony of tones. Greetings, travelers from the outer rim. I am Prime Illuminator Zephyrus of the Veridan Empire. We have been aware of your approach since you entered our nexus. Welcome to the heart of Seven Suns. Alina stepped forward. This is Commander Alina Vasquez of the United Earthship Horizon. We come in peace, seeking to establish diplomatic and trade relations with your people. Zephyrus's form seemed to brighten. Peace is always welcome in the heart. Your species' recent addition to the network has created considerable interest among our scholars. We would be honored to receive a delegation on Veridan Prime. We accept your invitation, Alina replied formally. What protocols should we observe? Bring whatever representatives you deem appropriate. We shall provide accommodations suited to your biology. Be advised that our world experiences unique atmospheric conditions due to our proximity to the heart. We will ensure your safety. The transmission ended, leaving the bridge in contemplative silence. Prepare a landing party, Alina ordered. Dr. Tanaka, I want full atmospheric and radiation analysis before we set foot on that world. And Lieutenant Chen, prep the cultural exchange protocols. Something tells me this is going to be unlike any first contact we've experienced. As the Horizon set course for Veridan Prime, Alina couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to encounter something that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. Veridan Prime defied every expectation. The landing party, Alina, Dr. Tanaka, diplomatic specialist Ambassador Clark, and a small security detail, descended through an atmosphere that shouldn't have existed. The planet orbited far too close to its star for liquid water, yet sprawling oceans reflected the orange giant's light across continents that teemed with impossible cities. Atmospheric composition is Earth normal, Dr. Tanaka reported as their shuttle touched down at the designated landing coordinates. But the temperature regulation systems must be phenomenal. We should be experiencing surface temperatures of over 800 degrees Celsius. Through the viewport, Alina watched a delegation of Veridans approach. Up close, they were even more remarkable than their holographic representative. Each stood roughly 8 feet tall, their bodies seeming to be crafted from crystallized starlight. As they moved, patterns of luminescence flowed beneath their translucent skin like captured aurora. The lead Veridan stepped forward as the landing party emerged. I am Secondary Illuminator Aurelius. Prime Illuminator Zephyrus awaits you at the central convergence. If you would accompany us. The transport that carried them through the city was unlike any vehicle Alina had ever seen. It appeared to be made of the same crystalline material as the orbital structures, and it moved without any visible propulsion system, gliding silently through streets that pulsed with veins of liquid light. The city itself was a marvel of bioluminescent architecture. Towers spiraled skyward like frozen flames, their surfaces shifting through spectrums of color that followed no pattern Alina could discern. Gardens of what appeared to be living crystal grew alongside boulevards where thousands of Veridans went about their daily lives. "Your people," Ambassador Clark ventured. "You seem to be composed of energy rather than organic matter." "How is this possible?" Aurelius turned, his features shifting into what might have been a smile. "We are the children of the heart. Long ago, our ancestors discovered how to merge with stellar essence, to become beings of living plasma and light. It grants us longevity beyond your comprehension and abilities your science might consider miraculous." "The orbital structures around your stars," Dr. Tanaka asked, "are they collection devices of some kind?" "In a manner of speaking. They are nurture rings. They channel stellar energy to sustain our civilization and feed the heart itself." Alina felt a chill despite the perfect climate. "Feed the heart." Before Aurelius could answer, their transport arrived at the central convergence, a massive structure that seemed to reach into the star-filled sky. As they disembarked, Alina noticed something disturbing. The streets around the building were filled with beings that weren't Veridans. Dozens of different species, some recognizable from the trading networks, others completely alien, all moving with a strange, purposeless lethargy. "Your guests?" Alina asked carefully. "Honored contributors to the great work," Aurelius replied. "Come, Prime Illuminator Zephyrus is eager to explain our civilization's greatest achievement." They were led through corridors that seemed to be grown rather than built, past chambers where more of these listless beings sat in groups, their eyes vacant despite being from species Alina knew to be intelligent and vibrant. The central chamber took Alina's breath away. It was a vast sphere suspended within the building, its walls transparent, offering a view of the 7 stars in their impossible configuration. And there, floating in the center of the sphere, was Zephyrus, but not as they had seen him before. The Prime Illuminator was enormous, his form no longer vaguely humanoid but expanded into a complex mandala of living light. Streams of energy connected him to points throughout the chamber, and Alina realized with growing horror that those connection points led to enclosures where dozens of beings from various species stood motionless, their life force being slowly drawn away. "Magnificent, is it not?" Zephyrus's voice boomed from everywhere at once. "Behold the heart of 7 suns, not mere stars but living entities, nursed to consciousness through the willing sacrifice of billions of sentient beings across the galaxy." Dr. Tanaka's scanner was going wild. "Alina," she whispered urgently, "I'm reading massive bioenergy transfer. They're draining life force from those beings." "The network," Alina said, understanding flooding through her with sick clarity. "You built it. Not for trade, for harvest." Zephyrus's form pulsed with what might have been pleasure. "Your species learns quickly. Yes, we seeded the galaxy with portals, creating a vast web to draw the sentient races together. Trade was merely the bait. Each species that joins the network eventually finds its way here, lured by promises of knowledge and advancement. And then you feed them to your star gods," Ambassador Clark said, his diplomatic training barely containing his revulsion. "We offer them transcendence," Aurelius corrected. "Their life essence becomes part of something infinitely greater. The heart of 7 has grown in power for millennia, and with each new species added to the network, its consciousness expands." Alina's mind raced. 47 species in trade relationships with humanity. Billions of sentient beings across dozens of worlds, all unknowingly walking into a trap that had been laid across galactic history. "Your preliminary scans of human population centers were quite encouraging," Zephyrus continued. 9 billion potential contributors, with colonies spreading across multiple star systems. Your species will provide enough life force to awaken an 8th sun." "We'll never," Alina began. "You will," Zephyrus interrupted, and suddenly the chamber filled with Veridan guards, their crystalline forms crackling with contained stellar energy. "Your ship has already been taken. Your crew joins the honored contributors as we speak, and you, as representatives of humanity, will have the privilege of witnessing the birth of a new star god. Alina looked at her team, Dr. Tanaka clutching her scanner, Ambassador Clark's face pale with shock, her security detail reaching for weapons that would be useless against beings made of living plasma. Around them, the life force of dozens of species flowed upward through crystal conduits, feeding monstrosities that masqueraded as stars. She thought of Earth, of the colonies, of the 9 billion people who had no idea that first contact had just become extinction. "There has to be a way," she whispered. "Oh, there is," Zephyrus said, his voice carrying false sympathy. "Surrender your species willingly, and we will ensure the process is swift and painless. Resist, and we will harvest every human world slowly, keeping your people conscious as their life essence flows into our growing gods." Alina met the alien gaze of humanity's destroyer and made a choice that would echo across the galaxy. No. The Veridan guards moved with liquid grace, but Alina had not survived 2 decades of military service by hesitating. As crystalline hands reached for her team, she triggered the emergency beacon concealed in her uniform, not a distress call, but something far more dangerous to the Veridans. "Dr. Tanaka now," she shouted. The scientist had been discreetly calibrating her scanner throughout their tour, analyzing the energy flows that sustained the chamber. As the beacon activated, she reversed her scanner's polarity and aimed it at the nearest crystal conduit. The effect was immediate and catastrophic. The conduit shattered, severing the life force flow from a dozen beings in that section. Sparks of uncontained stellar energy arced across the chamber as alarms throughout the building began to wail. "Impossible!" Aurelius staggered as feedback from the damaged conduit struck him. "Your primitive technology cannot affect our systems." Alina smiled grimly as her security team opened fire with specially modified plasma rifles, not at the guards, but at more conduits. Dr. Tanaka's analysis had revealed the Veridans' greatest weakness. Their technology was so advanced, so perfectly attuned to stellar frequencies, that it had no defenses against crude electromagnetic interference. "Did you really think we came here unprepared?" Alina demanded as chaos erupted around them. "The moment we saw your impossible star formation, we knew we were dealing with technology beyond our understanding. Protocol 7 has been active since we entered your system." Zephyrus's massive form contracted with rage. "Protocol 7. Complete data transmission to all human worlds," Ambassador Clark explained, pulling out a second beacon and activating it. "Every sensor reading, every conversation, every detail about your harvest operation is being broadcast through the wormhole network as we speak." The beacons weren't just transmitters. They were modified versions of the quantum entanglement communicators used for instantaneous communication across the network. But instead of simple messages, they were sending a complex data virus designed by Earth's best programmers. "Your network depends on quantum entanglement to maintain the wormholes," Dr. Tanaka called out as she smashed another conduit with her modified scanner. "But quantum systems are vulnerable to cascade failures. We're introducing random quantum noise into every portal connected to human space." Alina watched with satisfaction as Zephyrus's form began to flicker and distort. The prime illuminator was directly connected to the stellar energy grid, and the feedback from the cascading system failures was causing him physical pain. "The virus is designed to propagate through any system that tries to filter or stop it," Alina continued. "It will spread to every world connected to the network, carrying detailed information about your harvest operation. Every species you've deceived will learn the truth." "You cannot destroy the work of millennia," Zephyrus roared, his voice cracking like solar flares. "We're not trying to destroy it," Alina said. "We're trying to free it." The chamber shuddered as explosions echoed from other parts of the building. Alina realized that the life force collection apparatus was failing throughout the facility. All around them, Beings from dozens of species were beginning to stir from their enforced lethargy as the energy drain ceased. "The beings you've enslaved," Dr. Tanaka observed, her scanner now reading normal life signs from the recovered captives. "They retain their memories, their personalities. They were never truly gone, just suppressed." One of the nearby beings, a six-armed creature Alina recognized as a Centaurian trade negotiator, stumbled toward them. "The stars," it said in its translated voice, "the stars are screaming." Alina looked up through the transparent chamber walls at the heart of Seven. The perfectly arranged stars were no longer pulsing in rhythm. Their light was becoming erratic, chaotic. Without the steady flow of life force to sustain them, the artificial consciousness within each star was beginning to break down. "What have you done?" Aurelius whispered, his crystalline form beginning to crack and dim. "What we should have done the moment we discovered the network," Alina replied. "We've introduced free will back into your perfect system." The building shook again, more violently this time. Through the chamber walls, Alina could see similar structures throughout the city flickering and failing. The Veridan civilization, built entirely on stolen life force, was beginning to collapse as its foundation crumbled. "The wormhole network," Ambassador Clark said, checking his communicator, "it's destabilizing throughout this sector. The quantum cascade is exactly what we hoped. It's not destroying the portals, but it's breaking the Veridan's control over them." Alina felt a surge of hope. If they could get back to their ship, if they could escape through a portal before the entire system collapsed. "The horizon?" she asked her security chief. "Status." Lieutenant Rodriguez checked his tactical communicator. "Cargo Bay 2 reports successful defensive action. The crew fought off the boarding party and retook the ship. They're standing by for immediate extraction." Zephyrus made one final attempt to restore order, his massive form expanding and brightening as he drew directly on the failing stellar grid. But the effort only accelerated the cascade failure. Cracks of darkness began to appear in his luminous body as the very energy that sustained him turned chaotic. "This is not over," he declared, his voice now distorted and breaking. "There are other sectors, other harvest worlds. The heart will endure." "Maybe," Alina admitted as her team fought their way toward the chamber exit. "But it won't endure unchanged. The galaxy knows about you now. Every species in the network has the plans for our quantum virus. Your victims won't be walking blindly into your trap anymore." As they reached the exit, Alina looked back at the collapsing form of Zephyrus and the chaotic energy patterns where the heart of Seven had once maintained its perfect, terrible order. "Enjoy your screaming stars," she said, and led her team toward freedom. The journey back to the horizon through a city in collapse was a nightmare of falling crystal and failing light. All around them, the bioluminescent architecture was dimming as its energy sources failed. Veridans stumbled through the streets, their once perfect forms flickering like dying flames. But it wasn't just the Veridans who were affected. Thousands of beings from dozens of species were emerging from buildings throughout the city, freed from the lethargy that had held them in thrall. Alina watched as groups of them began to organize, some helping their former captors, others fleeing toward what appeared to be spaceports on the city's outskirts. "Commander," Dr. Tanaka said as they reached their shuttle, "I'm reading massive quantum fluctuations from the orbital structures. The nurture rings are beginning to break apart." Alina looked up at the sky where streams of debris were falling like shooting stars. The crystalline megastructures that had surrounded each star for millennia were finally succumbing to the gravitational and magnetic forces they had somehow defied. "Will the system survive?" Ambassador Clark asked. "Unknown," Dr. Tanaka replied, helping injured members of their security team into the shuttle. The stars themselves might be artificial constructs. Without the life force to sustain them, they could destabilize or collapse entirely. As their shuttle lifted off, Alina got her first clear view of the scope of the disaster they had unleashed. The heart of Seven was visible as 7 points of increasingly erratic light, each surrounded by clouds of crystalline debris. Energy arcs were forming between the stars, Not the controlled plasma streams of before, but chaotic lightning strikes that seemed to be tearing holes in space itself. "Captain Novak," Alina called as they reached orbit. "Status report." The Horizon's captain appeared on the shuttle's communication screen, her expression grim. "We've successfully repelled the boarding party, but we've got bigger problems. The wormhole network throughout this sector is experiencing cascade failures. Some portals are collapsing entirely, others are becoming unstable." Alina felt her stomach drop. "Can we get home?" "The good news is that our quantum virus is working exactly as designed. It's spreading through the network faster than the Veridans can contain it. I'm receiving reports from Earth that similar liberation events are occurring on harvest worlds throughout the galaxy. And the bad news: the destabilization is affecting portal navigation. We might not be able to reach the exact wormhole that leads back to human space. We could end up anywhere in the network." Alina made the decision without hesitation. "Do it. Whatever it takes to get word back to Earth about what we've discovered." As the shuttle docked with the Horizon, Alina got her first look at the aftermath of the boarding action. Scorch marks on the corridors, damaged systems, and most disturbingly, several crew members in the medical bay suffering from what Dr. Tanaka identified as life force drain. "They'll recover," the ship's doctor assured her. "Whatever the Veridans did, it wasn't permanent. But they were definitely trying to convert our people into the same type of drained servants we saw on the planet." Alina nodded and headed for the bridge. As they prepared for their escape through the chaotic wormhole network, she found herself thinking about the broader implications of what they'd discovered. "The scale of it," she said to Ambassador Clark, as they watched the navigation team plot a course through the destabilizing portals. "How many species do you think they've harvested over the millennia?" "Hundreds, maybe thousands," Clark replied. "The network spans the entire galaxy. They could have been doing this for hundreds of thousands of years." Dr. Tanaka looked up from her analysis station. "I've been studying the energy patterns from the heart of Seven. I think the stars themselves were once living beings, possibly the first species the Veridans encountered. They weren't just harvesting life force. They were converting entire civilizations into cosmic entities." The implications were staggering. Alina imagined countless worlds, countless species, all lured into the network by promises of trade and advancement, only to be slowly drained of their essence to feed monstrous stellar gods. "Captain," Lieutenant Martinez called from navigation, "I've found a stable portal route. 3 jumps should get us to the Centauri sector, and from there we can reach human space." "Do it," Alina ordered. As the Horizon approached the first wormhole, Alina watched the heart of Seven one final time. The 7 stars were no longer in their perfect formation. 2 had already collapsed into dim, cooling remnants. The others were expanding and contracting erratically, their artificial consciousness clearly failing. "The screaming stars," she murmured, remembering the words of the freed Centaurian. "What was that, Commander?" Captain Novak asked. "Nothing," Alina said. "Just hoping we've bought the galaxy enough time to prepare for whatever comes next." The Horizon disappeared into the wormhole, leaving behind a star system in its death throes and a galaxy that would never be the same. Earth had 18 hours to prepare. The quantum virus had worked better than anyone had dared hope. Even as the Horizon made its way through the destabilizing wormhole network, reports were flooding in from every human colony and trading partner. The information about the Veridan harvest was spreading through the galactic community like wildfire. Alina stood in the emergency command center beneath Geneva, surrounded by the leaders of Earth's united government and military. On the massive displays around them, real-time intelligence updates painted a picture of a galaxy in chaos. "Confirmed liberation events on 47 worlds," Admiral Chen reported. "The Andromedans have seized control of their local network hub and are broadcasting warnings to all connected species. The crystalline entities have somehow crystallized their entire portal network, making it inaccessible to external control." Secretary General Williams, the nominal leader of Earth's government, looked overwhelmed by the scope of what they were dealing with. How many beings do we estimate were being harvested? Dr. Elizabeth Hayes, Earth's foremost expert on xenobiology, consulted her tablet. Conservative estimates put it at over 500 billion sentient beings across the galaxy. The Veridans had been operating for at least 50,000 years, possibly much longer. Alina studied the tactical displays showing the current status of the wormhole network. About 30% of the portals were now under the control of liberated species or had collapsed entirely. Another 40% were experiencing varying degrees of instability. The remaining 30% were still under Veridan control, though that was changing by the hour. "What's the status of the other harvest centers?" she asked. Admiral Chen highlighted several points on the galactic map. "We've identified at least 12 other star systems with similar configurations to the Heart of Seven. Most are experiencing cascading failures as their victim populations revolt. However, 3 systems appear to be attempting to accelerate their harvest operations, meaning they're trying to drain every being in their collection facilities before the rebellion can spread further." Alina felt sick. Even in defeat, the Veridans were determined to feed their stellar gods. "Can we stop them?" "Not directly, but we don't need to." Admiral Chen smiled grimly. "The liberated species are already organizing response fleets. The Andromedans alone are deploying over 300 vessels. Apparently, they lost their homeworld to a Veridan harvest operation about 800 years ago." The revelation explained why the Andromedans had been so eager to trade with humanity, why they had seemed so interested in human military capabilities. They had been preparing for this moment for centuries. "Commander Vasquez," Secretary General Williams said, "what's your assessment of the Veridan military capacity?" Alina had been thinking about this since their escape from Veridan Prime. "Their technology is incredibly advanced, but it all depends on stolen life force. As their harvest operations fail, their capabilities should degrade rapidly. The Veridans we encountered were essentially beings of living plasma. Without constant energy input, they'll lose coherence." "However," Dr. Hayes interjected, "we should assume that some harvest centers will attempt a final offensive. If they can capture a few billion beings before their systems fail completely, they might be able to sustain themselves long enough to rebuild." "Earth's defenses?" Alina asked. Admiral Chen brought up a display showing the Sol system. "We've successfully quarantined our local wormhole network. No external portals can access human space without our specific authorization codes. However, if the Veridans have technology we haven't accounted for, they could bypass the network entirely," Alina finished. "Faster-than-light travel through normal space." "Precisely. We're estimating 18 hours before the nearest Veridan-controlled force could reach Earth if they decided on a direct assault." Alina looked around the room at the assembled leaders. 18 hours to prepare for an attack by beings who had harvested life force from half the galaxy for millennia. It should have been hopeless. Instead, she felt oddly optimistic. "They're not going to attack Earth directly," she announced. "How can you be certain?" Williams asked. "Because they can't afford to. Every harvest operation they lose makes them weaker. Earth has 9 billion people, but we're defended and prepared. The Andromedans are offering military support. The crystalline entities have shared their defensive technologies. Even the Storm Riders from Proxima are providing weather control assistance for orbital defense." Alina moved to the central display, highlighting the current network status. "The Veridans' best option is to consolidate their remaining harvest operations and try to maintain what they have. They'll fortify their surviving star systems and wait for the galaxy to forget about them." "And if you're wrong?" Admiral Chen asked. "Then we'll make them regret choosing Earth as their target," Alina said simply. As if summoned by her words, alerts began flashing across the command center's displays. Lieutenant Rodriguez, now serving as Alina's aide, rushed to the communication console. "Incoming transmission through the emergency network," he reported. It's from the Veridan Empire. They're requesting a parley. Alina and Williams exchanged glances. A communication from their would-be harvester so soon after the liberation was unexpected. "Put it through," Williams ordered. The main display flickered, then resolved into the image of a Veridan Alina didn't recognize. This one appeared more stable than those they had seen during the collapse of Veridan Prime, its crystalline form steady and bright. "I am Supreme Illuminator Solaris, Regent of the Outer Rings," the being announced. "I speak for the surviving territories of the Veridan Empire." Williams stepped forward. "I am Secretary General Williams of United Earth. What do you want?" "To offer terms for peaceful coexistence," Solaris replied. "The recent unpleasantness was the result of misunderstanding. The harvest operations can be suspended. We propose a new arrangement, voluntary contribution of life force in exchange for advanced technology and protection." Alina couldn't help but laugh. "You're offering to change from forced harvest to voluntary harvest and calling it peaceful coexistence. Your species has proven remarkably disruptive. Perhaps a partnership would be more beneficial than conflict." "Here are our terms," Williams said, his diplomatic training keeping his voice level despite the absurdity of the negotiation. "Complete cessation of all harvest operations, liberation of all sentient beings in your custody, dismantling of the artificial star constructs, and full access to Veridan technology for the purpose of undoing the damage you've caused across the galaxy." Solaris's form flickered with what might have been amusement. "Unacceptable. The Heart Suns cannot be simply dismantled. They are living entities of immense power. Without constant sustenance, they will destabilize and potentially cause galactic catastrophe." Alina felt a chill. "What kind of catastrophe?" "Each Heart Sun contains the compressed life force of billions of beings across thousands of years. If they collapse uncontrolled, that energy will be released as a cascade of quantum disturbances. Your precious wormhole network will be destroyed entirely, stranding every species on their home worlds." "You're lying," Admiral Chen said. "Am I? Your scientists can verify the quantum resonance patterns. Each dying Heart Sun becomes a quantum bomb capable of destroying spacetime across hundreds of light years." Alina looked at Dr. Hayes, who was frantically consulting her tablet. The xenobiologist's face was pale as she ran calculations. "The energy readings from the collapsed stars in the heart of 7 system," she said slowly. "They do show massive quantum disturbances. If all 7 had collapsed simultaneously, the destruction would have reached Earth," Alina finished. Solaris's form brightened with satisfaction. "Now you begin to understand. The galaxy needs the Veridan Empire to maintain stability. We offer a new compact, limited harvest operations in exchange for preventing galactic annihilation." Alina stared at the creature that had once planned to drain every human life to feed its star gods, now holding the entire galaxy hostage to its continued existence. "You planned this," she realized. "Even your defeat was designed to give you leverage." "The Veridan Empire has survived for 50,000 years by adapting to changing circumstances," Solaris acknowledged. "We will survive 50,000 more." As the communication ended, Alina found herself facing a terrible choice. They could destroy the Veridan Empire and risk the collapse of the entire galactic civilization, or they could allow the harvest to continue in some limited form, condemning billions to feed the artificial stars. But as she looked around the command center at the faces of Earth's leaders, Alina realized there might be a third option. "Dr. Hayes," she said, "how long would it take to analyze the quantum structure of a Heart Sun?" "With Veridan cooperation, maybe 6 months. Without it," Hayes shrugged, "years, maybe decades. And if we had help from every liberated species in the galaxy," Hayes paused, considering, "with their combined knowledge and technology, we might be able to find a way to safely dismantle the Heart Suns without cascading quantum collapse." Alina smiled. The Veridans had made one crucial error in their calculations. They had assumed that their victims would remain divided, that the galaxy would choose the easy path of continued enslavement over the difficult path of liberation. They were about to learn how wrong they were. 6 months later, Alina stood aboard the Alliance flagship Liberation, watching as the largest fleet in galactic history prepared for the final assault on the last Veridan stronghold. The ship itself was a marvel of cooperative engineering, a fusion of human adaptability, Andromedan metallurgy, crystalline entity quantum computing, and technologies from 47 other species. Its crew was equally diverse, beings that had been enemies or strangers mere months ago now working together toward a common goal. Final Fleet Status Report, Admiral Chen called from the command center. The holographic display showed the assembled forces. Over 2,000 vessels from 63 different species, all converging on the Omega Centauri system, where the last functional heart suns continued their terrible harvest. Human forces, 200 vessels including 15 dreadnoughts, reported Captain Novak, now serving as Fleet Tactical Coordinator. Andromedan forces, 300 vessels including their quantum artillery platforms. Crystalline entity forces, 150 ships plus the mobile defense grid. The list continued, each species contributing their unique capabilities to the assault. The Storm Riders had provided weather control technology that could create electromagnetic disturbances in space itself. The silicon-based lithomorphs had engineered specialized mining equipment that could bore through crystalline structures. Even the gaseous nebulans had joined, offering their ability to exist in the vacuum of space as organic scouts. Dr. Hayes, Alina asked, status of the quantum dispersal project. The xenobiologist, now leading a team of scientists from across the galaxy, looked up from her calculations. We've successfully mapped the quantum structure of 12 heart suns. The theoretical framework for controlled energy release is sound. However, we've only been able to test it on the smaller, already destabilized stars. Will it work on the full-scale heart suns? The mathematics suggest yes, but Hayes hesitated. The margin for error is incredibly small. If we miscalculate by even a fraction of a percent, the quantum cascade could still destroy half the galaxy. Alina nodded grimly. The past 6 months had been a race against time, with liberated scientists working around the clock to find a way to safely dismantle the Veridan star gods without triggering the catastrophic collapse that Solaris had threatened. Commander, Lieutenant Rodriguez approached with a communication tablet, message from the Veridan Supreme Illuminator. Alina took the tablet, reading Solaris's latest offer. Like the dozens before it, it was a variation on the same theme: limited harvest operations in exchange for not destroying the galaxy. The Veridans still believed that fear would eventually force the Alliance to negotiate. They had not accounted for the sheer determination of beings who had been enslaved for millennia. Send the standard response, Alina told Rodriguez. Unconditional surrender or we proceed with the assault. Actually, Dr. Hayes interrupted, we might want to consider a modified version of their offer. Alina stared at her. You're not seriously suggesting we allow them to continue harvesting? Not harvesting, Hayes clarified quickly. But we might need their cooperation for the quantum dispersal process. The heart suns are incredibly complex structures. Having Veridan technicians assist with the dismantling could reduce the risk of cascade failure significantly. Work with our slavers to free ourselves from slavery, Admiral Chen said dryly. There's an irony. Alina considered the proposal. Every simulation they had run showed the same result. Attempting to dismantle the heart suns without Veridan technical knowledge carried an unacceptable risk of galactic catastrophe. But trusting the beings who had orchestrated the harvest in the first place seemed equally risky. What guarantees would we have? She asked. Complete oversight by Alliance personnel, Hayes replied. Veridan technicians would work under direct supervision. Any attempt at sabotage or escape would result in immediate termination of cooperation and acceleration of the assault. Before Alina could respond, alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Captain Novik's voice crackled over the communication system. All senior staff to the bridge immediately. The Veridans are making their move. Alina and her team rushed to the bridge, where the main display showed the Omega Centauri system in chaos. The three remaining heart suns, arranged in their characteristic perfect triangle, were pulsing with increasing intensity. "They're accelerating the harvest," reported the sensor officer. "Energy readings from all three stars are off the charts. They're draining every being in their collection facilities simultaneously." Alina watched in horror as streams of life force flowed from orbital platforms to the heart suns, which grew brighter and larger with each passing moment. "Estimated harvest completion," she asked. "At current rate, approximately 6 hours. After that—" The officer paused, double-checking his readings. "After that, each heart sun will contain enough energy to create stable wormholes without the network. They'll be able to attack any world in the galaxy directly." Alina realized with sick clarity what the Veridans were doing. Rather than negotiating, they were gambling everything on one final power surge. If they could complete their harvest and achieve true stellar consciousness in their artificial suns, they would become essentially invincible. "Fleet status," she demanded. "All vessels report ready for immediate assault," Admiral Chen replied. "But the quantum disruption from the accelerated harvest is making long-range targeting extremely difficult." Alina looked at the tactical display, weighing their options. A direct assault would be costly. The Veridans' remaining forces were considerable, and they were fighting with the desperation of beings facing extinction. But waiting for the harvest to complete would doom not just the billions currently being drained, but potentially every free species in the galaxy. "Dr. Hayes," she said, "can we implement the quantum dispersal process while the heart suns are actively feeding?" Hayes ran rapid calculations on her tablet. "It would be incredibly dangerous. The energy flow patterns are in constant flux, but—" She paused, a look of sudden realization crossing her face. "Actually, it might be our best chance. The hearts are focused entirely on absorption right now. Their defensive systems would be minimal." "All vessels, this is Commander Vasquez," Alina announced to the fleet. "We're going in immediately. Operation Liberation is now active." As the largest military force in galactic history accelerated toward the Omega Centauri system, Alina found herself thinking about the billions of beings whose fate hung in the balance. Not just those currently being harvested by the heart suns, but every free species that would face annihilation if the Veridans achieved their final victory. The irony wasn't lost on her. Humanity, the newest species to join the galactic community, was now leading the charge to save it. 5 minutes to weapons range," Captain Novik announced. Alina watched the growing light of the heart suns and prepared to gamble the fate of the galaxy on a scientific theory and the courage of 63 species who had learned to trust each other in the face of cosmic horror. 3 years after the Battle of Omega Centauri, Alina stood on the observation deck of New Geneva Station, watching as the newest additions to the Alliance fleet conducted training exercises among the asteroids. The battle itself had lasted 18 hours and cost over 1 million lives across 63 species. But they had won. The quantum dispersal process had worked, slowly and carefully dismantling the heart suns and releasing the trapped life force of countless billions back into the galaxy. The Veridan Empire had finally fallen, its surviving members integrated into the Alliance as equals rather than masters. "The final census reports are in," Admiral Chen said, joining her at the viewport. He looked older now, bearing the weight of command during the reconstruction of galactic civilization. "We've confirmed the liberation of over 800 billion sentient beings across the galaxy. The rehabilitation programs are ahead of schedule." Alina nodded, watching as a squadron of mixed-species fighters performed complex maneuvers that would have been impossible without the trust and cooperation forged during the Liberation War. And the network, fully operational under Alliance control. The Andromedan's quantum encryption protocols make it impossible for any single species to seize control again. We've also established monitoring stations to watch for any signs of new harvest operations. Do you think we'll see something like the Veridans again? Chen was quiet for a moment, considering. The galaxy's a big place. There are probably other predator species out there, other forms of exploitation we haven't imagined yet. But now we know what to look for, and more importantly, we know we can work together to stop it. Alina thought about the price of that knowledge. The billions who had died before the liberation, the species that had been completely harvested before anyone knew to resist, the civilizations that had trusted the network and been betrayed. "Commander," a voice called from behind them. Alina turned to see Dr. Hayes approaching, her face bright with excitement. The xenobiologist carried a tablet displaying complex astronomical data. "You need to see this," Hayes said, showing them the display. "Long-range sensors have detected something extraordinary in the galactic core." Alina studied the readings, recognizing the telltale signatures of massive artificial structures. "Another harvest operation." "No," Hayes said, barely able to contain her enthusiasm. "It's a message. The species that originally built the wormhole network, we think they're still alive. The quantum patterns spell out mathematical concepts in a universal language. They're trying to communicate." Alina felt a familiar thrill of discovery, the same sensation she had experienced when first seeing the wormhole network. The galaxy was vast and full of wonders, some terrible, some beautiful, all waiting to be explored. "How long before we can reach them?" she asked. "The Alliance Council is already organizing an expedition," Chen replied. "Mixed crew, full diplomatic protocol. They want you to lead it." Alina looked out at the stars, thinking about the journey that had brought humanity from a single world to leadership of a galactic alliance. They had faced extinction and emerged stronger. They had encountered cosmic horror and found the courage to fight back. Now they had the chance to meet the ancient builders of the network that had shaped the destiny of countless species. "When do we leave?" she asked. 6 months, Hayes replied. "Time to recruit the best minds from every Alliance species and prep for whatever we might find." Alina smiled, feeling the weight of command settle comfortably on her shoulders. The galaxy was dangerous, full of predators and parasites, ancient machines and dying gods. But it was also full of allies, friends forged in the crucible of shared struggle, and the endless possibility of discovery. "Let's go see what other wonders are waiting for us out there," she said. As the Alliance fleet continued its exercises among the asteroids, Alina began planning humanity's next great journey into the unknown. The stars that had once screamed with the pain of the harvested now sang with the voices of the free, and the galaxy stretched before them, infinite and full of promise. The network that had once been a trap had become a pathway to the stars, and humanity, along with their newfound allies, was ready to explore every corner of it. The harvest was over. The age of liberation had begun.